Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Do? Why, if I had a brain, I could...
Miles per hour.
I could while away
46, 56 degrees.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. Thanks for taking the time. I know we all have very busy schedules, and it's always appreciative of us who are in the industry to know that there are other people out there that are interested in this and how we can move this, the agenda forward. And the agenda really is getting more women involved in areas of study that maybe they thought about in the past, but maybe didn't think that they could really achieve any real success in that area. I think we saw from tonight that the whole process of being alive is following your dream. And sometimes it's really a matter of making sure that you're not stifling somebody's dream. We saw that a lot tonight too. So Martha and I were asked to talk about our backgrounds a little bit and how we got to where we are. So I guess I won or lost the coin toss. I'm not sure, but I'm going first.
I did the coin toss while you were missing, so.
I left the room, I got nominated. That's what happens, you know? So I'm going to first talk a little bit about my background and how I got here. I'm not going to give you a lifelong lesson on that. I'll keep that short, and then Martha will. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of the influences in our lives and some of the influences that we're trying to have on young women today in our jobs and in our city. And then what we'd like to do is really just kind of open it up to hear what you all have to say. Because we've been working in this area for a while and we have some ideas, but we also know that we come up with better ideas when we all work together. And so if that's all right, we'll just get moving, okay? So, a little bit about me. I always start this off. Both of my grandfathers were engineers. My father was an engineer. I have 3 brothers, 2 of whom are classically trained engineers. My one brother who's not an engineer is a dentist, and so when we feel like being nice to him, we call him the materials engineer. When I was growing up, I had a mother who kept telling me that I would be a great nurse. Okay, nobody's laughing, so I'm assuming nobody here knows me. Because if you did, you would realize that I am not the person you want next to your bedside when you are sick. That's just not me. But I did start off my college career in nursing because that's what I had been told all my life, that I would be a great nurse. Even though I grew up in a family where the rule of the house was, if you broke it, you had to try to fix it. Is that not a cool rule? It was an awesome rule growing up. You didn't have to fix it, but you had to try to fix it. So I have these early memories of my dad showing me how to take my bike apart. You know how you lay out a piece, and the first piece you take off, you put kind of next to you, and then the second piece you put a little further away, and you just kind of lay them out in order so that when you go to put things back together, you start at the far end and you just kind of work your way through. There's a logic to that. Instead of just kind of throwing everything up in the air and then you scratch your head and go, I don't even know where to start. So from a very young age, my family modeled how do you make things and how do you build things. And so that was really part of my growing up, along with my mom who kept saying, you're gonna make a great nurse. My mom would have made a great nurse. I really believe that that was what my mom's dream was. It turns out it wasn't mine. And so as I get through high school, you start into college, I discovered that engineering was really what I wanted to do. And I had enough modeling in my family to where I was strong enough to do that. I was able to try nursing for a year and then be able to say, Mom, not for me. And instead of hearing, oh, you need to do that because that's what's good for you, I was supported with, okay, if that's not your dream, what is it? And I was able to say engineering's my dream, and I was able to get on with it. And I have to say that it's been a great adventure. I'm getting kind of close to the end of my career, I would say, although I still feel like I'm pretty energetic and I have a lot to offer. But I have to say it's been just an amazing career being an engineer. As you heard earlier, my background is industrial engineer. And I have found that I have worked in just about every industry there is on the planet, and a few service companies as well. I've spent my entire career going back and forth between industry and universities. When I finished my undergrad at the University of Cincinnati, my life's ambition was to be CEO of GM. I love cars. That was actually a project my dad and I had. When I turned 15, we bought a car, and I had to learn how to tear it apart and put it back together. Kind of had a crazy dad. I actually carried that on with my kids. I have 2 daughters, and they weren't allowed to drive till they could fix a flat tire. And I actually made them change the oil, but that was kind of useless because nobody changes their own oil anymore. But they had some things they had to do. But what I have done over my career is gone back and forth between industry and academics. And I have to say it's been a great career. I can't say I'm one of those lifers. I haven't spent 28 years at any one place. I've never lived 28 years in one place. But to me, that's who I am, and that's part of my dream, and that's part of what I want out of my life. Before I came here to Kansas State University, the Polytechnic campus, I was at Kent State University. So my friends back in Ohio joke that I went from KSU East to KSU West, which is okay. Doing great work back there. I enjoyed doing a lot of 3D modeling. That was the lab that I ran back at Kent. But before I was at Kent, I was at university hospitals, working on strategically helping them improve their cardiac cath lab, their admissions process. I worked with orthopedic surgeons to improve their throughput and their outcomes. And so I've been pretty much, like I said, in just about every industry there is. I have also been very passionate about introducing this career field to other women, young girls in particular, because it has been so rewarding and it has been so exciting. And it's something that I want to share with young women. Because I think sometimes when we're growing up, we're kind of pigeonholed into, well, my mom tried to pigeonhole me into being a nurse. That obviously didn't work. And so I guess I've been on this mission now to introduce young girls to a whole variety of kinds of their opportunities that they have, hoping that they'll find their passion. What is it that gets you excited? What is it that you wake up in the morning and you can't wait to do? Kind of like what we saw the young girl doing today in the movie. You know, she got up, she was sleepwalking and talking about science. That's the kind of stuff we need to find, and we need to encourage really all of our kids to get involved with. So I think I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to turn it over to Martha to talk a little bit about her background.
I come from a very different background than Verna. I have lived within 45 miles of Salina all my life. So I'll start with what really interested me when I was young. I went to, this is really going to date me, a one-room schoolhouse, and I had 2 kids in my class, myself and a girl, and we really did go outside to the outhouse. So very, very rural, just to give you an idea. It was 3/4 of a mile from my home. And there was not enough students there, and I ended up in a small grade school in Wells, Kansas, but it was bigger. I had 3 kids in my class, a girl and a boy, so things were great. And what was unique there is that I had a teacher that was very science-oriented and math-oriented. He invented, or I'm going to say he invented it because when you're in 3rd grade, you think the teacher knows everything. He invented a machine that we could turn and rotate and make a rope. Mechanically, how we did that, and gave us a rope, and that was really interesting to think through how that worked. So that, and the other thing that he forced upon us at the time was ciphering. And I don't know how many of you understand what ciphering is, but basically the teacher gives you a math question and start out with the younger kids in the class, and you go to the board, he gives the math question, and you work through the problem on the board. So fortunately for me, I was very good at math, so I often won the ciphering contest. So that was an indication that math was my thing. And I liked the mechanics of making the rope, the mechanics of building Christmas presents for a parent. So that really impressed me there. And being from the rural Kansas, I lived on a farm. So Verna talks about her dad really asking her to work on pieces. Well, we had to do that. Really, that was what we did, was we had to do all of our maintenance on our equipment. And I had a brother and a sister. And my sister was kind of foo-foo. She did all the house things and liked to be inside and do all of those things. And I liked to be outside. So I ended up being the tomboy in the family that just loved to run the tractor and help fix things. So again, more mechanical things growing up. And living on a farm, I really learned to really appreciate the environment. That was where you made your living. So it was important that you learned to take care of the animals, you take care of the farm. So all of those things kind of come to my background. So eventually I made it to a school, junior high and a high school, where I got up to 60 kids in my class. And Jane's sitting over there, and she went to the same high school I did, so she probably knows these stories already, Jane Anderson. So we're from Minneapolis High School. And while going to high school, an opportunity we had there was you could take a class at the area technical school here in Salina. I thought, oh, my brother did that. He turned out okay. He's a mechanic, so I'll try that. I'll take drafting. So I went and I took drafting for a semester, or 2 semesters while I was in high school, which gave me 1 full semester. And then went back when I graduated, and I graduated high school when I was 17, and went over to Wilson and Company here in Salina. And you know, growing up on the farm, you needed to have a job and produce something, do something every day. So my nature was to get a job. So I went over to Wilson and Company and talked to Mr. Butcher and told him what I was doing and I'd like a job. And he said, you can start anytime you want to. So at 17, I went for my semester out at Salina Area Technical College and started working at Wilson, thinking, I have no idea what I want to do with my life, but I'm going to do this because I started it. So fortunately, that ciphering at Wells paid off for me. I was able to quiz out of all the math classes and graduate in 1 year and start my full-time job at Wilson and Company. And I started out working on special projects in Saudi Arabia. And basically, that's moving sand piles for roads. It was pretty darn boring, so I was pretty sure I'd made a mistake. Then I worked on some buildings in Ireland, which was not quite as boring, but still not fun. And then I landed in the environmental department, which had about 30 people at the time. And we were working on water and wastewater treatment plants all over Kansas and other states. So I had the opportunity to go to some treatment plants and really got interested in the wastewater and the biology and what you could do, how you could take this really mucky, dirty water and turn it into something that was really clear and could go into a stream and be safe for the environment. So it really began being a passion that I really enjoyed, working around wastewater. And so while I was at Wilson and Company, I have a daughter who, she worked there for 2 or 3 summers while she went to Kansas Wesleyan. So trying to instill upon her this science, math, engineering, talk to her about, what are you going to do now that you're headed to college, and where do you really want to go? First thought was a marine biologist, but with a boyfriend that's a farmer, that didn't turn out too well. So she changed to a chemistry degree and secondary education. Now she's a master's degree in physical science. So I didn't completely lose her, because she told me she intended to not spend the rest of her life going around to cities and states looking in stinky holes, which is what we had her doing at Wilson and Company, taking pictures of projects and doing things. That didn't seem like that was going to be her passion. Even though I enjoyed it, she didn't see that. But she is a chemistry science teacher today at Minneapolis High School. So I didn't completely lose the mission. And she does ask me to speak to her students sometime about the future. So similar to what Verna says, it's important that we try to bring along young women in this aspect. And so from that time at Wilson, I spent the majority of my time, not really in the Wilson and Company office, but on the site of City of Salina projects, which I would say probably about 15 years I spent between the wastewater plant and the water plant designing these projects and starting them up and getting them operating. So I was really excited about doing that, and then the director of utilities was going to retire, and the opportunity to apply, and it said, well, we need a licensed engineer, which I'm not, so no need to apply. Well, I didn't apply, and for many, many weeks, I kept getting this call from different employees, you must apply, must apply. And so I did, and then I went to the interview, which had these men sitting around the table, and they give me all the technical questions, and I think I've really smoked them on those because I knew the answers. And then they said, how do you feel about being in a field where all you're going to do is work with men? Will that be a problem for you? And I said, no, I don't think that'll, I thought of some issues coming here and working for the city versus the private, but that wasn't a thought because my 28 years at Wilson and Company, most of the time out in the field, I was the only woman on the site. And I learned over time that if you really want to be respected, that you need to have integrity and be knowledgeable of what you're talking about and to be able to speak their language. And had an individual that came from a very large construction company, and our first meeting together, he was disagreeing with the plans and specs, and I was saying, no, this is what it says here, and he started explaining to me how wrong I was, and threw his hard hat on the floor and real mad. And I opened the front door and kicked his hard hat out in the floodwaters of 1993, and from that day on, he respected me. So as a woman in this field, over the, starting 40 years ago, I, overcome some of those challenges, but really didn't think about it as I was doing that. I was just doing my job and finding my passion. So I ended up at the city of Salina, and I told them this was kind of like your children. I'd sent them off to school and they'd moved away. Now they were coming back, and I was able to come to the city of Salina and be able to take care of all of the systems and facilities that I had designed and spent years at. So it was a wonderful opportunity, and those of you that know me know that I have a real passion for the water and the wastewater and anything that we can do to improve what we have here in Salina and look into the future, which are our challenges, is to have a sustainable water supply. And then on the other side, it's to be able to treat all of the wastewater and effluent to a standard that won't create any environmental issues. We're always finding new contaminants or new issues from the personal care products and what effects they have on the streams. So each year, there's more and more that we have to be aware of and to deal with. So the job that I have, there's never-ending challenges. It's always something new. I tell most people that don't ask me to do anything too big in a day, because most of the time during a day, I work on 8 or 10 different things and just keep things moving along. So it's a real challenging job. You get to meet a lot of great people, get involved in a lot of organizations to where you can meet individuals around the state, leadership roles in those. So, when I talk to young students, I try to talk to them about being involved in organizations, trying to find a mentor, someone that'll take them under their wing and help them into the future. And these are all things through the course of my life. I had a mentor from Wilson, one from the city, and those two people really made the big difference. They really took care of me. And so in my whole career, Verna had listed these jobs. I have 2. I've worked for Wilson and Company in the city of Salina, and I don't anticipate a 3rd career because I'm also like Verna. I have a few years left and many goals for the city of Salina for a river project, a water supply that's more drought resistant, a wastewater treatment plant that's more environmentally friendly. Working with Verna, we're going to solve a groundwater contamination issue out at the air base. So
Yep.
As far as in the field that I work in, there's no end to the challenges and opportunities, whether you're male or female. There's lots of fun things to be done. I'm going to end with that.
I think what you've heard from both of us is we're really on opposite ends of the spectrum. Martha found her passion, and she's been able to carry that career through very few companies and staying right here within 45 miles of growing up, where I've gone through a variety of industries and companies, and I've lived in a variety of places. And I think that speaks volumes to the opportunity that women in particular, I mean, that's what we're talking about today, that we have, that our young women have that opportunity to do anything from the two extremes and anything in the middle.
Yes.
It's really all about finding where it is that you can make the most difference.
And as anyone looks for that passion, I can't imagine getting up every day and going to work and thinking, oh, I hate my job. I wonder what's going to happen today. I can't hardly wait to get out of bed and get to work so I can work on one of the neat things I have to do that day. So to me, that's what's important, is finding a career that you're really passionate about, that you can, I feel like each day we do good. And we help our citizens, we help our community, and basically, what better job for me than to really protect the health and safety in the environment. That's a really important job, and without water, there is no life. So sustainable water is the future in my area and how we get there. And there's a lot of ideas out there, but they haven't all fallen into place yet, but plenty to do in that aspect.
And I think that's where we agree, and what we do have in common is that we both get up every day and we're excited to go to work. We're excited to make a difference. I think that is very common, particularly with young women, and that's what we want to do. We want to make a difference. And I think we both have in mind and in our history helping other people as well. Whether that's helping individuals have safe drinking water, or whether it's helping a corporation produce a better product, or helping physicians get through and have better outcomes for their patients. It's all about making things better, and that's pretty exciting.
And I think for myself, when I think, well, my daughter really didn't head in the direction that I might have wanted to, similar to your mother.
I've got an English major, so.
But she did follow in the science area, and she calls me to come speak to her classes.
That's fun.
About the future of what I do and the opportunities that are there. So I think maybe she today does appreciate what I do, and I appreciate what she does, trying to help young minds for the future. So we definitely come down, I came down a winding path with not many stops along the way, but eventually I found my way, and truly, I think blessed to have worked for two great employers that have given me the opportunities to seek, I guess, my passion and to help me be successful in that. So again, I'm always going to harp on find your mentor. You know, find that person that knows the field and can help you. Work on leadership skills. They're all, whether you have your children, get involved in clubs and organizations and take a leadership role, because from my standpoint, I've been involved in many state organizations, and it's gave me a wide range of networking and individuals to help resolve issues that come to play here in Salina, and it's just, the networking is great.
She took the straight path. I tacked my entire career. If you're familiar with sailing, I did a lot of tacking. Martha talked too about her teachers when she was in school, the 2 and 3. I can't even imagine that.
All in one room.
Wow, that's amazing. I had a very different experience. By the time I reached high school, I was in a small private high school college prep program, and I remember the first day I walked into my algebra class, and the teacher just kind of looked at everybody, it was an all-girls school, and said, well, I'm not really sure why you're all here other than this class, if you pass it, will help you get into the college of your choice so that you can find the appropriate husband who can keep you in the manner of which your father has made you accustomed. I'm not kidding, you can't make this stuff up. I lived through that. Fortunately for me, that was a dare. That really came across as a dare. And I told my mom and dad about it, and my dad just started laughing, and he said, what do you want to do? Do you want to blow her away, or do you want to sit back? And so that was kind of, that was my moment of truth, I guess it was. So again, you know, very different, but
Both have a passion for what we
Yeah.
do and to really to work with the young.
But you know,
individuals.
when I think about it, it would have been easy for me after hearing that algebra teacher come in and say that. It would have been really easy for me to go, oh yeah, I believe you. And I've often wondered throughout my life how many young women did believe her. And what is it that we can do to help offset that kind of a voice that comes across?
That's a good point.
So, anything else?
I think I'll just address questions or thoughts or.
We'd really like to hear what you all have to say. I mean, we've been living this. Sure.
I think it's important to look at a bigger picture. It sounds like you two are fortunate to have some stability in family systems. The movie reflects a whole lot of what is seen in my belief in our current culture is the family dysfunction. And it just hurt my heart as I watched that. How many children are brilliant, but for various reasons, one being this family dysfunction, not have the opportunity to live out that brilliance. This girl in the movie thought that her teacher would take care of her, you know, and be that mentor perhaps, and then the teacher said no, and I understand from the teachers, but that hurt, you know, to see that little girl not have that. So I think as a community, we really need to take a look at a bigger picture and don't put the cart before the horse sometimes, you know. Identify how we can help family stuff, you know. The addiction issue in our community is pretty darn high. And when you see kids that come from that dysfunction, addiction obviously is going on there. My goodness, what chance do those kids have? That worries me a lot.
I think that was the thought that Verna and I felt when we walked out of the movie, that this would be a great presentation if we were promoting social workers, because we just felt it was a horrible issue with family dysfunction. And for me, growing up in Midwestern Kansas rural area, that's not what we saw growing up. Our families were all supportive and
Well, you were the lucky ones.
and today it's different with my daughter as a high school teacher. She taught at Central High School some, and then Beloit High School, and then in Minneapolis. And she can definitely bring that story home and what the teachers are responsible to try to help those students, you know, make decisions that pertain, that really their families should be making together, but they count on the teachers to help them. It is definitely an issue that it's hard to deal with, and the teacher struggles with it. They do struggle with that a lot when they teach a wide variety of students. So I think you're on track with your thinking. There's more to be done in that area.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. We have quite a few challenges, and we've come a long way. And what we're talking about, I think, as part of this series is really what's the place of women in society? I think that's an even bigger question that at some point we have to get to. It's not just the family unit that's broken. I think there's some challenges within society as a whole. What is our place?
I thought it was kind of an interesting parallel, how her struggle to save the planet was really a struggle to save herself, that she was breaking that chain, her survival. So that,
I would agree. I think that was kind of the moral to the story.
It was enlightening, and obviously you can do a lot when you're the writer of the story.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess we're really interested in what are your comments and what are some of your experiences. I think as we share experiences, that also helps. Or what are some of the challenges?
I think that the film addressed addiction very well, showed a really good depiction of what it was. But I noticed that the mother, she really wanted to do better and thought that she could. I think that society, especially for young women, should try to address addiction. And there's not a social worker on this planet that can help anybody. There's not a program I've ever seen. Addiction's all around me, but it's experienced it in so many areas. There's no solution. And I wish there was a thing that could really empower women. It could be something, anything that was different than something that we have now.
After working in colleges for a long time, the thing that I witnessed were young women that still felt that their sexuality was what was their power. And I don't think that's really changed as much as I would have thought it had. And that, having worked studying in our office and everything, it became really clear that it's really some of the same things that were going on when I was a teenager that I'm not sure we've empowered young women to feel about themselves, that they're more than that. And that was, I think, maybe the most disappointing thing of working in college is seeing young women have such low self-thoughts about themselves. And these are the students that, women that have chosen that career path, whatever, you would think they would have hope for them, but that wouldn't be such a huge issue. And maybe it's just what happens with young people, I don't know. But I have to admit, that was like, and that movie I thought portrayed that very well. The mother, it was obvious that that's all she felt like she had. Even though she had dreams for herself, her own mother. I love the part where the daughter tells the granny, you telling her this is what's destroying her. Like destroying her mother's dream and realizing that her mother was really not that different than she was, that she had a dream for herself. No one understood it. No one understands her, and yet nobody seems to understand how to help these women be beyond anything but sexual. The girl was a barmaid, and nothing wrong with being a barmaid, but I could tell that's what they were insinuating, that it was her sexuality that got her living, and that when she went to sell the ring, she was being sexy, and I thought that was that was one of the strongest messages in the movie, of that society really hasn't changed that much. I don't think it has. You guys think that?
I think the vernacular has changed, but the motivation hasn't.
Right.
And the underlying assumption behind what we as a culture expect hasn't changed much. Martha made a reference that her daughter was in school and on a path, but then the boyfriend did something.
He's a farmer. He's not going to live on the coast, so better pick a career that lets me be in mid-America.
And I agree that when you're in a relationship, there's compromise, but at what point in your life do you choose to be a little selfish and to do what's right for you? Hi, Greg.
This wasn't in the movie, but Title IX, what I've seen with my sisters, is the incredible opportunity to open up for them through sports. And we didn't have it before, we have it now, so there is that area that creates much more opportunity for confidence, for growth, for leadership that we didn't have before, and we've kind of all forgotten about it now, but if you
It's
go
coming
back to
back.
the 60s, it
I
wasn't
think
there.
women's sports have changed women's idea of themselves more than anything else, which is so weird. It's remarkable. I would agree completely with that. It's created a confidence builder that is really interesting.
So how do we move that over to these other careers?
I just want to say something about basketball. Back in my day, when I played basketball, I tell people this now, and they just, what? Anyway, women, because they didn't think we were strong enough to run full court. And
Half
also, we had to be careful so we could get pregnant when we get older and have children, because because that's what women did. They had to have court rule. So we could only, 3 offense, 3 defense, 3 offense, 3 defense. The defense would dribble to half court, pass it over to offense, and shoot. So there was six girls on the team. But it was because we women had to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves, and we just didn't have the stamina to run full court. So thank God Title IX came along.
And Title IX was really controversial when it came out. It was actually, it started quite a few programs that have been dedicated for the last 50 years towards improving and providing choices for women and opportunities. It kind of fell into the background for a while, but it's coming out now very strong again with some of the challenges and the harassments that's happening on campus. And so it's coming back, and I think we'll use it and we'll leverage it to, again, move forward.
Well, date rape when I was in college was swept under the curtain and hid and it's locked tight. And I think it's very interesting that it's really come out right into the campuses are, it's exploding. And I find that, and really it started from one girl that just really became vocal about what happens here. And I think that is maybe I'm not giving enough credit to young women that they are more outspoken, I think, about not having, there's more outspokenness, I think, about these issues that were never completely not dealt with when I was a teen at all. And so it was just better to keep it all secret. And frankly, the colleges did that, of course, so they don't hurt the reputation and still recruit students. They totally know what's going on the other side. So it was a right either way, but I think it's interesting that it's become a real topic on the campuses. My last year working on campus, there were some young freshmen, they were mad because they felt like they couldn't say anything without they felt like they were being maligned in a certain way. And I thought maybe there's some truth in that. Like, they just felt like we're not really bad people, and we're not the ones. But I think that's just part of a subject becoming more open that becomes anger on both sides. So that's been really interesting, I think, to see how that really plays out. If it's just a fad or if it will actually make a difference, I'm not sure. What do you think when we're on campus? Do you think it will make a difference?
I think it's a very complex topic. I believe social media, or sometimes we refer to it as anti-social media, has made it easier for people to say things and to feel less vulnerable talking about it. It becomes more impersonal. And so that may help drive the conversation. I'm a big believer that conversation is what helps us change. If you can't talk about something, if you can't identify the problem and have a legitimate conversation, a civil and thoughtful conversation about the issue, you're not going to make any difference.
K-State has done some things, and maybe it's during your watch, maybe it started before, but that have been intentional about building programs for women in science, girls in science. Going back to Lene's comment and some of the things about family, it comes to mind that maybe the family issue is fixed backwards by empowering new and more voices to find a passion in a way that they couldn't have found it before, and that elevates the family through a generational shift of having a voice, having an opportunity, having, we don't all live on farms now, so the opportunity to fix something or take something apart has to be more intentional as part of the education process, and may in fact do that. What's been your experience in working with young women in that environment, and have you seen some positive results?
I'll pay you the $20 later. I'm really very proud of the fact that K-State Polytechnic has been involved with something called the TWIST program for quite a few years now. TWIST stands for Teen Women in Science and Technology. And it was started, I think it's
25 years.
Thank you. 25 years ago, we've been involved with this. And it's really to bring young women onto campus and expose them to a variety of career paths. And we'll be going through that again in January.
January 5th.
And Jung would know because she's our chemistry professor and she's been actively involved in that.
I mean, I came from a real small town, 38 people in my class, but I always thought it was kind of interesting looking back. They said that we need to have a program to get involved women because where do they get left out? Why does that, because at least in my experience, the young girls, women, they sure a little faster, like junior high, and they seem to be the ones that really grasp the science and math at that point. And then somewhere through the high school, they got, it was left behind and the guys went, because I guess they weren't supposed to, I don't know.
One of the challenges, TWIST is successful. I sometimes go through elementary school, no problem to stand. I go out middle school, no problem. But when we go to high school, some of the students who are interested in STEM, somehow when they go high school, it's not anymore fun because somehow I think somehow we need to catch that high school student stay in the STEM field, the interest get into the program. So that's the issue. So the other one, sometimes we see if I pair male and female student, unless it's first intention, it's sometimes still it's a stay behind. So intentionally two female in a group, there's a written paper. It's much function better than male female team in the beginning. So, but one thing is I do not know how we can keep the high school level, but we're pretty good. K-State, the TWIST, really more than 300 people per year. January, we get them. So it's a high school level, but junior high school, high school, somehow we have to
it's all of a sudden,
stay put
all of a sudden
there. Yes.
it shifts.
There's a video that you should see. It's called Like a Girl.
Like a Girl.
And it's produced by Always, it's female pads. But they talk about how the self-esteem plummets in females at puberty. And our society does that. And it's just really touching when you see this. It's quick videos on YouTube. Just look at Like a Girl, and they do these little things with these little girls. They say, hit like a girl. What is it? A girl hit like this. They give it all this, and, but all of a sudden, ask a high school girl, hit like a girl. And they, and that's
been trained.
Been trained. Society sends that message. Look on the YouTube right now. What they're showing? Victoria's Secret Week. We're all supposed to look like Victoria's Secret angels.
That's
all over the web right now.
We didn't see that.
Yeah, I missed that one.
I didn't see that. And I just, I'm sick of it.
We didn't have that at Wells Grade School.
But isn't it true that there are more women going into medical school and to some of these higher professional occupations than men?
There's more women right now being admitted into medical school. And I'm gonna say there's a caveat to that though. First of all, it's a helping profession, so it attracts women into that. The challenge that I see though is that the medical profession is not nearly as well respected as it used to be. It's not as well paying as it used to be. And when you look at who's going into neuroscience and some of the more advanced and higher level, those are still predominantly with the men. And I want to go back to something that you said. What we discovered at a previous institution was, At my previous institution, we also had aviation, which is a pretty cool area. Also, women are underrepresented in that area. But what we discovered was we would run summer camps, and it was a mom and daughter summer camp where we actually introduced the moms to the same things that we were introducing the girls to. Let's go for a flight. This is what it takes. This is the hand-eye coordination. And we started talking to them, and we got the moms comfortable with that particular career path. And then we found that they were the cheerleader. If the daughter was interested, they were behind it. But we have a lot of moms out there that don't understand what these careers are. And so how can you encourage someone if you don't know what you're trying to do? And so we found that that was somewhat helpful.
Where does the engineering field, I know that there's supposed to be equality and it's the best person for the job and all of that, but as two women who are leaders in your respective areas, what do you make better from a female perspective that the guys maybe don't? I mean, are there holes that could be promoted or things that you say, gosh, you know, we need you to be able to fill this spot because, you know, it needs that? I mean, are there things in terms of your approach as women in the field that a male dominated? I mean, and I'm going to try to preface this. Art history tells a particular story because it's been an old white male art history profession for a long time, and so that's the story that's been told, and that's the shape that's been made to what we dictate as art history. If engineering has been largely shaped and influenced from a male perspective, are there things that you could see that women could help the industry as a whole if it was better represented?
I might be able to help answer that.
Okay, Barb.
And I was thinking of Martha. I used to work with Martha at Wilson and Company. And one of the things that I remember one of the engineers appreciated about Martha is she would ask questions where I think guys would not be as open. They would be more prideful. And so I'd say, I mean, that's one example I could think of that came to mind is she may make less mistakes because she's going to find out more about it. And then another thing, I've been told I'm approachable where maybe some other personality, mostly male, would not be in working with clients. So those are two things that I thought of.
And I was going to lean into that answer about asking questions. When I worked at Wilson, referencing where Barb did, quite often I worked with different men and they would come to a decision very quick. And often I thought that was a bad decision. So I would challenge them on occasion and ask, well, why? Explain that to me. So I think others would look at a very small window, not ask a lot of questions, come to a decision. And I like to look at each step, methodically work through it, come to decisions that made sense to me. And I found that to be true with one of my bosses and mentors there that I think eventually when I got my 20-year pin, he spoke about me and he said, he traveled a lot with me in the end, and he goes, when I meet with Martha, I tell her what to do, and she then tells me where to go. We get along just fine. So the point was and I think Verna hit on this, is you got to have open communication. You got to be able to have that, and I think part of it is having confidence. What I have found for myself, if I'm confident when I have a discussion that you can convince others that you know what you're talking about. Our city attorney at the city says that's my greatest feature, is that I'm always confident whether I'm right or not. So I think he was trying to tell me occasionally he didn't agree with me, but I was always confident that I had reasons that I did things, and I was confident about what I did. And I think, building confidence in women in the future is an aspect that's been lost.
Are there more women going into engineering?
Actually, right now, the trends are dropping a little bit.
I can say I'm involved
Well,
in
with a couple of exceptions.
couple of state organizations, and I see the membership and the totals, and the State American Water Works Association, there's roughly 38 women involved and 300 and some men, so we're 1 to 10. And the same on the wastewater side. You go to a conference, if you just kind of sit in the room and woman, man, you know, that's pretty true. So that's kind of the ratio we see in the profession from the water and the wastewater side. It's about, at best, 1 to 10.
In biomedical, that's not true. There's more women going into biomedical engineering right now.
Do you think women going into the medical field has made it less prestigious? I mean, if, what you were just saying, has that hurt it?
I think that might be part of the story. There's certainly a big influence on regulations, insurance companies. It's a much more complex issue than that. I don't think I could blame it strictly on one aspect.
What about university engineering faculty, the ratio of men to women? How has that changed over the last 25 years? I'm guessing not much, and it's pretty lopsided. And how important is making that adjustment to bringing along younger women?
I want to reinforce what Bill just brought up. I've been thinking of this comment for a little while now. Before being the research director of the Land Institute, I was an undergraduate professor for 18 years. And the mentorship factor, I just think, cannot be overstated.
It's crucial.
Because I think of all the programs I was involved in, and now I've been able to watch through Facebook and connections with these students of ours who has gone on and done things in the fields in which they were trained. And there's no question that certain women who are on the faculty have just been far more successful, far more at bringing along professionals in those fields. I mean, everyone has had some degree of success, but it's not even close. And then it becomes a question of why engineering? That's a tougher field. At the Land Institute, where we hire different folks, and plant breeding does not have a lot of women. I mean, you can look at our staff, and it reflects the overall number of female plant breeders who have been trained out there, as opposed to ecologists. Far more balanced field. And I often wonder, why is this? Is it just a field that has not been cracked and had the mentors move up and start to transform that discipline? I don't know. But the mentorship issue is absolutely critical.
I can tell you in our engineering technology program here on the Polytechnic campus, we had one full-time female faculty member in that department for a very long time. We hired our second this past year. And it is a challenge. First of all, we're looking for people with PhDs, and that's a challenge. And then once you get into the university system, after you've gone through all of that schooling, so now you're somewhere between 25 and 30, right? So now you're hitting into family time if you want it, but once you're into the university, you have 6 years for tenure, and there's no time for even eating right then. And so I think we've just set up a whole bunch of systems that were really designed to limit who participated. I think we have to get back into looking. As a systems person, I really believe the system gives you exactly what the system was designed to give you.
Why are some disciplines more balanced than others? In gender ratio.
Oh, I think it has something to do with exposure. I think mentorship is key. It's talking to women and men. I mean, there are certain fields that are much more heavily male or female dominated. I think it's that exposure and that mentorship, and I think it's also valuing all positions. And it's putting a value that's not associated with a gender. It's really associated with the value to society.
I want to follow up on your comment about
Thanks, Greg.
K-State. I started before it was K-State in 1981, and the year I started,
Was it KTI or
it was
KCT?
Kansas Tech. There was one other female faculty member hired the year I started, and that was it. They had no women working there. And then there was another one a year or two later, so
But there were female
progress has
students?
taken place. What?
Were there female students?
There were,
Not
the
many.
ratio is about the same as it is now, actually.
A third?
Yeah, it's mostly men, but the other thing is, to follow up on Martha's comment, and it kind of related to what, in the management field, and I teach supervision, is the skills that women have that bring, what you're talking about, asking questions, and Barb, is a preferred skill that women do really, really well. So, and that's kind of a mentoring skill, is they're very process oriented. Process is in a big way, that's systems thinking. So the opportunity there, I think, is really, really positive. Probably more men in the management field yet than women, but women have the skill that is wanted. And when I served on a board of a farm group, it was all men, because agriculture is pretty male oriented. And we'd come in, we'd make fast decisions. We'd always argue and try to outdo each other. And ego was, and then we'd come back the next time, we're in the ditch, because we didn't know how to do process. Finally, I realized we need to get more women on this board. And they do have more women and probably making better decisions. So I think it's a function of process versus men like to make quick decisions, and they kind of look at a decision in a different way.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said ego.
Well,
I think that's a big issue for.
Is it ego, or is it because you're trained for competition?
It's
I got to be the first
it could
one to
be
get to the
that
answer.
the way we do as children, we learn there's pecking order. So we're you know, we count off. We always know where we stand in the pecking order. I don't know if women, maybe sports is going to change that for women, but they play more horizontal. You know, you be my friend, and that way. Whereas guys are, I know I'm going to get picked first, second, third, and fourth, and we're comfortable with the pecking order that we end up at.
I think that gender ratio is completely invalid because, you know, what difference does it make 50% men and 50% women? And if I had my own business, I would be the best person for the job. And it wouldn't matter if it was a man or a woman. And it might wind up 90% men look politically incorrect, or all women or all men, but I think that's how it should be. Pick the best person for the job. You know, gender shouldn't really matter.
I completely agree with you, and there's been a lot of research where they've taken resumes and they've taken the names off, or they've switched names to identify a gender, and we have an unconscious biasness in our society when it comes to looking at the best person. There was a number of research studies that have been done in that field, and it's fascinating to read them. You know, you have two resumes. If you don't have a name on them, you can look at them really quite objectively. But one of the studies that I read they used the resumes, and on one they would put Mary, on another one they would put John. And they would hand them to people, and people would tended to go towards John. They took the same resumes and swapped the names, showed them to a different group, and they still went to John. So I think philosophically, you're right. We should always be looking for the right person for the right job. I think that we have some unconscious biases that we aren't talking about yet that really do influence our decisions, even though we're not aware of them.
And also, the impediments for women to becoming the right person.
So I'll tell you a story. One of my first jobs out of college, I worked as, this is a really fancy title, I was an international liaison engineer for a toy company. Doesn't that sound impressive? What it meant was I coordinated manufacturing of toys in the Far East. And when I first started, my boss told me, he said, everything was handled electronically. email kind of stuff. And he said, listen, when you start working with the engineers in Taiwan and in Hong Kong and in China, don't use your name. Don't sign your name Verna. He says, from now on, you're Fitz. He says, it's a nickname. It's short for your last name, Fitzsimmons. So from now on, we're calling you Fitz, and that's what I want to see you sign all of your correspondence with. I really didn't think a whole lot about it until the engineers from China showed up about a year later, and they started walking through going, we need to meet with this engineer Fitz. I stood up and I said, I'm Fitz. And they said, no, we're looking for the engineer.
Mr. Fitz.
Yeah, apparently there was another one there somewhere. The advantage that I had at that point, once they realized that I really was the engineer Fitz they were looking at, they all kind of took a deep breath. But I had had a year of proving that I was technically competent. And so after they got over the shock of I wasn't the male that they thought I was, we were able to get along and we were able to move forward. But I think that's just indicative of the way cultures tend to operate. And it's still there. I mean, we tend to think this is the 21st century and, oh yeah, that doesn't happen anymore. But it does.
I've experience in the blue-collar field, and I'm a scientist now, or sort of. And in the blue-collar field, it's very obvious. The bias is right out there. And people tend to hide it when you get more academic because they know it's not right, it's not allowed. But it's very much there in my experience. But
And it's still tolerated.
Pardon?
And it's still tolerated.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we want to pretend it doesn't exist. But I have been wondering, some of the comments about the change of interests as girls get older. And I'm wondering with the teen programs, how those girls are selected. Or is it because they already have an interest, or somebody's encouraging them, or is it just everybody?
It's self-selected. The girls volunteer.
Well, I have a thought, and I don't know if it has changed in the last 20 years, but I kind of doubt it because it costs money to test kids when they first enter public school. To say, what are your strengths? What are your talents? I don't think that's happening. It costs money. It can be like pulling teeth to get them to do it by 3rd grade. And I have this, it's a theory that if we evaluate children when they first enter public school, instead of just saying, oh, I think you're gifted, let's see what your gifts are. Test everybody. Then maybe that would help to level out some of the things where maybe in a poorer area where you're going to assume that the kids are just not going to have any aptitude, that those kids might have a bit of a more chance, whether they're female or not.
How could a young child though know what they want to do?
Well, these tests are, they're really, and I don't understand because I'm not a social scientist, but they're very accurate.
Yeah, we've taken, like, I'm not real fresh out of high school, but I mean, I was in high school like a couple years ago, we had to take those tests and they are helpful they kind of give you a path of what you want to do, but.
Well, I think we might be speaking about two different things. They can give them to preschoolers.
Oh, really?
So they're more like testing aptitudes to tell differences between things. What's your reasoning, what's your way of reasoning about things.
Are you a 3D thinker?
Yeah,
or 2D?
Yeah, I guess so.
Do you learn by touching
Yeah.
and experimenting, or do you learn by reading?
But yeah, once you're already, you've already developed your interests, I've often wondered how good are those? I mean, it's just telling me something that I've already done, or,
Right.
yeah.
Do either of you work with the federal government?
And what?
Just in your work?
Oh, yes.
I assume so. I say, I totally different field, but I was 30 years as a national banking examiner for the federal government. And as I was coming on in early 80s, that was about the same time they really began the hiring. And it's been interesting to me to see, because in fact, when I left a few years ago, what used to be the male senior management out there has now really shifted. The women are in, I don't know what any statistics, but we've been a lot of major management positions. But also that is, there was a lot of concern that we're going to send Mary out to our small town bank. I did Kansas banks, so you're going out to the small town banks, and Mary's going to be telling the old CEO, bank president, female's going to be telling the male what's going on, what's wrong, and there was a little resistance to that, but as soon as they figured out that they knew it was going, and plus you got the leverage that, hey, we're from the government, you're going to do what we say, type of thing. But I think you began to see a lot of shift out, and now still women in the rural banking world are paid way less. You see the women that are really running the bank and the men that are getting the money, and it's still not equal because the workers are not getting paid.
I always find that amusing when I hear, oh, well, the men aren't going to listen to the women. You all had a mom, didn't you?
Yeah.
I'm going to add to that conversation in the Department of Health and Environment, Bureau of Water that I work with, almost daily, weekly. Recently, there's been a retirement of several of the, I'm going to call them well-established men in the department that were engineers and probably there 30 plus years. I remember all of them from years ago, and they retired. I'm seeing some of the positions now being filled by women, and the individual that's in charge of the Bureau of Water is now a lady that does not have an engineering degree. Came from watershed management and is overseeing Jamie. Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. And then some of the other departments there, there's several women that are now unit chiefs. I think of Jamie's old department has been taken over by a lady from that group. And then the groundwater contamination, Maggie, she's now moved up to be a unit chief, so that's why she's not involved with us. So most recent in the last year I've seen is the retirements have occurred there, that it seems like there's been some women that have moved up in those positions, and I don't know if it's because the men didn't think the pay was well enough or whatever reason. That's what the women tell me, but I don't know that that's true. I think they're really skilled at what they do and deserve their jobs. And so I think I've seen some changes in that. I don't know, Barb, have you seen that in the groups that you work with?
Yeah, I work with the other bureaus of air and waste, and they too have had retirement of men, and it's nice. Then now the women have opportunity to move up.
And that's just really been in the last, I'd say, year that I've seen.
It's in the last year.
There's a handful. I can think of 5 that have occurred. So if that's a trend in changes, but we have seen that there at that group. EPA, I'm not as familiar with all of the individuals there, or the federal group that we work with, but they do definitely have some women in the top positions. So I think there is some of that going on.
In the engineering field or the science field of women in science, there are some needs of our society or shifts of our culture that happen because there's a champion for that. American Medical Association and smoking, or somebody else and mental health, or someone else. I mean, that there's a champion. It seems like the sciences don't necessarily have a champion for women in science. That individually there are schools, there are programs, there are things, but not that collective voice. Do you think it needs that, or is there one, and I just don't know what that is, or who is, rather than a whole bunch of little kind of programs, is there a champion? Should there be?
I can tell you that right now in forensic science, because of Abby, does everybody know who I'm talking about? Abby on NCIS, the forensic scientist.
Dark hair.
All of a sudden, there's a lot more interest.
So you just need Hollywood to
It doesn't hurt.
Chemistry, American Chemical Society had COAC program, is female university faculties. So we have enough pipeline undergraduate. We have enough increased female students coming into the graduate school at this point. It's 20, but we are still far away to go. We have produced a lot of female PhD, but from there the steps is higher. Where do they go? So male PhD graduate go to big universities. Female PhD tended to go smaller community colleges, and then Dean mentioned their female lifestyle, balancing family issues. So stepping gap coming not only tenure, when they sustain to upper level. So Dean Fitzsimmons is the first female dean in our college, so we're still far away to go. And then NSF advanced program and the program is there, but still I think it's mass and time factored in it, because I had good male mentor for my career. He embraced me and he jumped, you're female, you're Asian, you're small, you have 3 strikes. Only thing you can do, you mentioned confidence, your knowledge, and you have to work hard. Otherwise, it crumbles. So to do that, it's complex, as you say. It's not one factor. You have to networking, you have to coach, you have to mentor. You have to have, if you're the female, you have a male in the community and workplace. You have good potential female comes in, embrace that person and able to navigate. It's not giving some, it's just giving, put in equal opportunity to advance the male mentees, female mentees on there. So it's far away to go, but coming from Asia and Korea, you advanced a lot, so we have to keep working through.
Do you think that high school women, like whatever happens to young girls, do you think it has something to do with how we view leadership in itself? Is that, whether you like Hillary Clinton or not, this isn't meant political, but I heard so many people just talk so hatefully about her. And I finally asked them, like, why do you really hate her? I was just curious. And there's really no answer. What I thought, is it just because she's a really strong woman? I don't know if that was really it or whatever else, but it doesn't really matter. But I'm wondering if that isn't something to do with what happens to girls in high school, that it's not okay to be a really strong, forceful person, that's not really considered feminine, you're not really going to be accepted in that, you're kind of stepping outside culture. Are the sciences seen as more masculine, so that itself is almost a barrier because it's not considered, I don't know, I'm just curious, maybe that's so stupid, but I've always wondered what happens to these kids that, you're just saying middle school or confident young girls, all of a sudden you get in high school and they're not. What has happened to them?
From my perspective, just going into, I'm a social work student, so kind of a blend, I like to think, of hard science, soft science. I've seen a terrible trend in my class. We did a 5-year plan, and these are girls fresh out of high school. I'm a little bit older than them. Their 5-year plan is just to get their master's and have children.
Why did you get a master's?
They want their title, but then that's it. They just want to go in and just start having children and families and stop at that. And there's a dark joke in social work that, us women are going to be, we get our way through school, and that man's going to get hired to be my supervisor, where I've spent 10 years in the field, and he just graduated. So even now, and it's still 2016, come on, we're still stuck.
I think it should be okay though, if a woman wants to get a master's and then have babies, that's her right to do that. If she wants to be a hairdresser or a dancer or whatever, it just doesn't make it, that's really what she wants. I mean, society doesn't have to need that, just what someone wants, so I think that should be criticized if that's what they really want. There's
And it wasn't that it was wrong, it's just that no one's pushing and challenging them to see past that they can do both. They can be a mother, they can be a grandmother, they can have, a good future in their career. They don't have to stay in one spot.
I mean, it's combining and going back to my old career, we traveled on the road a lot, and it was surprising when you saw the husbands with the wives, because women were having babies but still going out to travel. We aren't traveling the world, we're traveling Kansas, but you're still out overnight, gone all week sometimes. And then you'd get this mental image of what you thought their husband was going to be, probably a little more preppy, a little more whatever, and you'd see them, the guy that's at home with the baby, and it's this, Hunter, Burley, all those things, and you're thinking, that's pretty cool, because he's at home all week long with the baby, and, working during the day, and taking care of it. So I just, there's always that couple of instances I've taken that it was just really cool. That they're doing that that it's allowed to break those rules.
It's okay.
And the men were secure enough to say, yeah, here I am.
Secure enough. That immediately biases the whole conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I think we can raise kids faster without thinking very hard, see?
And on that note,
Maybe I'll be safe from myself. I had one statement.
Go ahead, Martha.
I want to tie back to a comment there. Mentoring is something that I take a lot of pride in. So at the city, had a brand new young engineer, graduated from KU, came to work on the City of Salina project, about 9-10 years ago. And she was doing a great job, had children, 4-6-year-old, and recently determined that trying to balance the family life and work for an engineering firm in the private side, where the demands are much greater about meeting obligations, being gone a lot, some of the conversations you talked about there, and worked with her. And she's chosen to work for a municipality, and she told me when she went to work for there that basically I had provided her with more knowledge and skills working with me at the city than she thought her engineering firm had provided her or taken her under their wing, finding that mentor, that she quit on my project and went to work for another city. So I think I overexceeded my expectation there.
One more?
Last question.
Okay. We've had in the last year this election that featured a woman. What impact do you think that will have on women's leadership or women going out to the future?
You're really going to push us to go political, aren't you?
It's the elephant in the room.
And it's a big one.
And I think based on,
Is it going
I think
to-
the election
Are
was.
people going to be more emboldened, or women going to be more emboldened to
I think
step
what-
up and be leaders politically, or are they going to be less?
I think it's going to be an interesting thing that it's going to play out over time, because we have the opportunity where women are either going to feel pressured into stepping back, they're afraid to be in the spotlight, or they're going to get emboldened and they're going to react like I did with my algebra teacher, and they're going to take it as a dare. I think you've got two different ways that it's going to happen. When I see all of the political appointments that have been made, I'm hoping that 51% of the population sees this as a dare.
Here's to that.